Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for our first session in the Wilkes-Barre office. This is kind of new to me to talk with you guys kind of through the computer. I hope you guys enjoy it. I really appreciate you guys having your cameras on so we could see you guys, and we appreciate your participation. Today we're going to be reviewing prompting strategies. This is an oldie but a goodie. So tell me, when we talk about prompting, what are we talking about? What's a prompt exactly?
Like providing assistance to help somebody either learn something. It could be a verbal prompt, a touch prompt. There's all different types of prompts. So
Okay, there's all different types of prompting, yes, and they are helping someone, assisting someone. And assisting someone with what, would you say?
skill acquisition.
Okay, so we're assisting someone with a skill acquisition behavior, right? So exactly correct. So we are assisting someone into learning a new behavior, essentially. And there's many different prompts that we could use. So when we think about prompting, where in the ABCs are we thinking about? Where do these strategies belong? Where do these prompting strategies belong in the ABC format?
Antecedent.
Yes, so antecedents. So these are strategies, the antecedent strategies. And what's super important about prompting that we need to keep in mind as we're using prompts? What do we need to be careful of happening? And what do we need to do?
Prompt dependency.
Prompt dependency. So what's our plan here with using prompts? That we fade them over time. Exactly correct. Good job, you guys. So we're going to fade prompts. So they're super temporary. And that's kind of the first word in the definition of prompts that you guys will learn in your classes. They're temporary, antecedent supplements that cause a behavior to be much more likely to happen. Right? If a prompt isn't causing the behavior you like to happen, it's not really a prompt, is it? So we want to make sure the prompt is temporary. We want to make sure it's in the antecedent section of our work. And we want to make sure that it reliably generates the behavior. And if you have all those three criteria, you are using prompts very well. And did I mention to fade it again? So we want to make sure we are constantly fading our prompts. Even after several successful uses of the prompt, we should begin to fade them because of the risk of prompt dependency is very high.
If you guys aren't talking, can you guys please mute your microphones? Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Any questions so far about prompting? All right, let's move right on. So what is a prompt? We talked about this already. Wow. Our temporary supplementary antecedent stimuli used to occasion a correct response in the presence of the natural SD. So we want to make sure that when we say natural SD, what do we mean? Yeah, exactly. So where we want to be teaching. We're teaching someone to wash their hands. What do we want to be in front of? A sink. I think Grace said, right?
I did, yes.
Thank you. Great. A sink, yes. If we're teaching someone to raise their hand in the classroom, where should we be? Thank you. Yes. So that's what the natural SD means, that we're teaching in the presence of where we would like to fade our prompts to, that we hope that in the future, no prompting will be needed and we're in front of the sink and the person is washing their hands. So we want to make sure that natural SD is in place. And good job with the ABA term, discriminative stimuli. Who was that said that?
Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany. That will eventually control the behavior. And there's two types of prompts that we want to consider. There's a response prompt. And when I use the word response, what word am I thinking about?
Behavior.
Thank you. Yes, response equals behavior. So when I see response prompt, I could think behavior prompt, that I'm doing what? I am engaging in some sort of behavior to get a behavior from someone else. So when I see the word response, I'm just thinking behavior. Operate directly on the response to cue a correct response or to cue a correct behavior. And there's three main forms of response prompts. There's verbal instruction, modeling, and physical guidance. But there's a few more that we're going to look at when we talk about the different types of response prompting. And there's also stimulus prompts. What would be a stimulus prompt now? Yeah, something in the environment that's going to trigger, that's going to cause a behavior to occur. What could be an example of a stimulus prompt?
If you're teaching letter identification, the correct response would be like a bigger letter as opposed to like a smaller one.
Yeah, that's a great. Who said that? Thank you, Brittany. Yeah, exactly correct. You know, and also I was thinking a stimulus prompt, it's like, hey, it's coming to winter. Someone yesterday was like, hey, Mike, you know, we have to make sure the heat is off when we leave the office. And it's going to be our duty to do that. So I'm thinking about doing what to help remind each other?
Put a sticky note on or something.
Putting sticky notes up, putting signs up, making sure that they're super noticeable. And the one thing about stimulus prompts that I've learned is that how to change them over time, move their position, change their location, make them different as you go, kind of hang up different ones. Because as you contact those stimulus prompts, they're likely to kind of lose their luster and stop attracting the eye as well. So we want to make sure we're changing those. So that's exactly what I was thinking. So response prompt and stimulus prompts. All right, let's keep going. So there's risks, and we talked a little bit about this. We must be aware that there are risks to prompts dependencies with the application of response and stimulus prompts. This occurs due to a failure to transfer stimulus control from the prompt to the desired stimuli. So that's our failure. It's all our fault as practitioners that we did not fade our prompts, and we didn't coach our team to fade their prompts, right? So make sure that this person doesn't become dependent on our prompts, which is then it becomes much more difficult to fade prompts. So ABA clinicians establish stimulus control with frequent differential reinforcement of behavior in the presence and absence of the SD conditions. So what do we mean by that complicated paragraph? How are we going to use differential reinforcement to fade our prompts? And when I say differential reinforcement, what do I mean? Different reinforcement. Thank you. Yeah. So how am I applying my reinforcement differently for prompted response compared to unprompted response or independent behavior?
Maybe instead of like the first, usually you would reinforce at the first independent attempts, and after you get that down, maybe decrease your prompts to maybe at the very end of it and just kind of reinforce differently than you did before.
And how would we reinforce differently?
You could go from a verbal prompt to a verbal phrase, maybe to like a thumbs up, or I don't know.
So I think that if the response is leaning more towards independence, the more independent the response, the better reinforcement you get.
That's right. Right? And that's how we're going to apply different reinforcement for a more independent response, right? The more independent the response, the greater the amount of reinforcement I'm going to deliver. The more, if I'm stuck kind of on a prompt, I might offer a moderate to minimal amount of reinforcement, but if I can move closer to independence, I'm going to offer a higher reinforcement. Okay. So these are the four main types of response prompts that we're going to talk about. We're going to see a most to least, we're going to see a least to most, we're going to see a time delay prompt, and we're also going to see graduated guidance. So let's get into it. So the most to least prompting, and we're going to take a look at this pyramid. And we are going to think about most to least. And we see on our pyramid, we're going to look at the very bottom, and we're going to see a full physical prompt. And as we move up the pyramid, we see our prompts getting less and less intrusive. And if you look over on the right-hand side, there's an example of a practitioner who kind of wrote in exactly what the prompts are going to be, which I like this practice, to teach someone to clap their hands. So at first, for a full physics, so we're going to start with using the most intrusive prompt. And that's what we mean by most intrusive. And we're going to move to the least intrusive prompt. So at first we're going to use a hand-over-hand assistance to help this person clap. And we're going to apply reinforcement. And as we're teaching this skill, we're going to slowly move down or move up the pyramid until this person is independently clapping. So then we move to a partial physical prompt, which might look like holding learners' wrists and forearms. Light physical prompt, where we're going to touch elbows. A model gestural prompt, where the instructor or the clinician is going to clap. And then the verbal, there isn't a verbal because I think that is the natural SD when we tell someone to clap. And then the person's going to clap. So we're going to start with the most intrusive prompt. And then we're going to move up. As we teach the skill, as it contacts reinforcement, as this person learns this behavior, we're going to slowly move up as we fade away our prompts. And we should be doing that immediately. As the person starts to get some fluency with this behavior, we're going to slowly move, not slowly, we're going to quickly move it up as quickly as possible. We're going to keep testing to see if we could fade our prompts and apply a higher level of reinforcement for a faded prompt. What behaviors do you think that this procedure is useful for? Behaviors that are brand new to the person, or behaviors that this person has been around a bit in their life?
Brand new, novel.
Yes, brand new and novel. This is a great strategy for behaviors that this person is brand new to. So working with adults and washing hands, that might be a consideration to use this, but they've probably been around washing their hands a lot of their life, so we might not default to this most to least prompting. But still a useful tool if we are teaching a behavior that's new or novel to the individual, where we are using most to least prompting. Does anyone have any questions about this type of prompting? And would you consider this a response or stimulus prompt strategies?
Response,
Yeah, response. Why?
because you're the one actually providing the prompting. It's not an environmental prompt.
Yeah, we are engaged in a behavior ourselves to get a behavior from someone else. Who said that? Thanks, Nadine. I didn't recognize your voice over the microphone. Usually I see you in person. All right, most to least prompting.
I'm still getting over being sick, so I'm
Well, I hope you feel 100% soon. All right, most to least prompting. Then we have least to most prompting. And with least to most prompting, I'm going to use the same pyramid idea. But this time I'm going to do the natural cue, and I'm going to slowly move up until I get the behavior I like. So I might start with the natural, and in this case, the clinician did the same thing. And in this case, this clinician's teaching someone to touch blue, probably touch a blue card or something like that. Listener response. So they're going to start by saying, touch blue. And the learner didn't engage in the behavior. Well, then they're going to move up to the model gesture prompt. And they're going to point to the blue card. The learner still didn't engage in that behavior. So we're going to move up and we're going to guide learner by the forearm to touch the blue card. And then the learner was able to successfully complete that behavior. So there's no need to use a more intrusive prompt now. And we could continue with this strategy. We could continue using least to most just in that way. And it's a good thing to do because we're constantly testing to see if a less intrusive prompt will be successful to evoke the behavior. But we can also switch now to most to least. And how do you think we could do that?
Once you find the prompt level that gets you the desired appropriate behavior or whatever you're trying to work on, then you could start there and start to slowly decrease the prompting as they're learning the skill.
Great answer, Nadine. Exactly right. So now I know exactly where this learner is as far as prompting level, and I can now start at that prompting level and use most to least now and switch least to most and use most to least. So kind of using least to most as a test. But again, I could just continue to use least to most every time to see if the learner will respond with a less intrusive prompt, because that is essentially what I would like to happen and what I need to happen. Thank you, Nadine. That's absolutely correct. Does anyone have any questions about least to most prompting? It would be a great strategy and to fill up your toolbox to save this pyramid from this PowerPoint training in your file, so you could refer to it as you're working with your VIP and also when you're developing your behavior support plan. And it would be extra good to do exactly what this clinician did, to help teach our staff and to help guide our practice by creating a pyramid that describes exactly the responses that the clinician should be engaged in when working with the VIP, and create this pyramid like we see for Touch Blue. Go ahead.
I think it would also be helpful too for your behavior checks if you were to like make up a prompting pyramid like this, and you can teach your technicians how to do this without you there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this would be awesome to see in the field and really help guide our work and keep everyone on the same page. Thank you. Any questions about least to most prompting? And again, be thinking about differential reinforcement and how we could reinforce heavily a more independent response as we fade prompts. Time delay prompting. It's one of my personal favorites. I like time delay prompting because it's easy to do, and I don't need to think about a lot of things to do time delay prompting. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the time between the SD and the prompt. So as I'm teaching someone, and this is good because I could identify a prompt that reliably works to generate the behavior, a response prompt. And or a stimulus prompt, I guess. And what I'm going to do is slowly, as I get the behavior, I reliably get the behavior from this prompt, I'm going to increase the time between the SD and the prompt until the prompt is faded into oblivion. So for instance, if I'm working with a VIP and I'm thinking about what behavior? Name a behavior?
Hand raising.
Hand raising. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to use a model prompt where I'm going to raise my hand to indicate to the learner it's time to raise their hand. And this model prompt has worked for this learner. Every time I've done it, the learner raises their hand too. So this is a good prompt to use for time delay. I'm going to slowly increase, as I'm working with the learner, maybe at first I wait 2 seconds before I raise my hand. As the learner starts to contact reinforcement, I'm going to fade to 4 seconds, then 6 seconds, then 8 seconds before I raise my hand and offer that model prompt. And before you know it, I could be at 30, 40 seconds and this learner is reliably raising their hand on their own when a question is asked in the classroom. Or it could be raising hand for another function, like asking to go to the bathroom or something like that, depending on what's going on, what we're trying to teach. So we want to make sure we choose a prompt that's reliably evoking the behavior. And then we're going to increase the time before we deliver it, which in my opinion is very easy to remember as we're working with the VIP compared to the pyramid systems that we previously reviewed. Does anyone have any questions about time delay prompting? And you can start with least to most to identify a prompt that is going to work for this VIP, and then switch right to time delay and increase the time before you offer the prompt. So don't be hesitant to use some of these strategies together in tandem. Any questions about time delay? You guys think it's a bit easier? Tim?
It makes sense.
Thank you.
Get out now.
Thanks, Brandon. We can always rely on you.
So I'm not standing up here awkwardly waiting. All right, graduated guidance is the final response prompt strategy we're going to be learning about today. And graduated guidance essentially is prompting technique in which physical guidance is provided only when needed and faded as immediately as possible. The procedure is twofold. Thank you. Provide physical guidance as needed, but immediately fade assistance per behavior. Begin with shadowing the learner closely. Recommended to prompt from behind. Okay, so we're going to prompt the learner from behind. But first, let's shadow the person. And the shadow is kind of like our assessment to see where the VIP might need some help. We're going to identify parts of this task that the VIP needs extra assistance with. And when we notice that our learner needs extra assistance, I'm going to swoop in and provide that assistance from behind, using a hand-over-hand assistance method, perhaps. And as the learner starts to engage in the behavior, I'm immediately fading away. And I'm fading away spatially as well, where I am literally walking away from the learner as they are becoming more independent. And if I notice the VIP struggling with a certain step, I'm going to swoop back in and provide assistance and then back off. And I feel like this is naturally kind of what we would do normally without even knowing any of these strategies, right? We would come in and help our VIPs with certain steps, and then we would step back when our VIP starts to engage in the behavior on their own. We're giving our VIP a chance to do it on their own, but if they need assistance, we don't want them to make a mistake or many mistakes. So we're going to swoop in to help them if they need our help. And then we're going to back away until we are literally out of the room and the VIP is engaged in the behavior on their own. Does anyone have anything to add or anything about graduated guidance or any of the response prompting strategies we've learned about this morning? Or anything to add that I didn't hit upon?
Graduated guidance similar to errorless teaching? Or at least
Well,
elements to
it does.
I guess.
It does. And I think we talked about a little bit about errorless learning in this training. I could be wrong. It's similar. So if our VIP makes a mistake, yes, we're going to come in and show them the right ways as far as, yes, of course.
Because you want to prevent the error from being.
We should be doing errorless teaching with all of these prompt strategies. So if our VIP makes a mistake, we're going to increase the level of prompting and show them the correct way so they don't make two mistakes. Only one is allowed in ABA. Go ahead.
Can you please give an example of a behavior and using full prompting, partial, just as an example?
Sure, give me a behavior.
Was the one that you just explained? Hand washing?
So hand washing, a full physical. So I might identify, if I'm identifying 3 response prompting and I'm identifying a full physical, I'm identifying a model, and I'm going to identify a verbal prompt. So the full physical prompt would be, I would describe that as me guiding the learner and taking them by their hands and showing them the steps of washing their hands. That could be like my full physical prompt. My next would be model gesture, and it's great when you have 2 sinks, and that's why I don't love the RBL bathroom, but I like it because it has 2 sinks, because it's great for model prompting. So if I'm teaching someone to wash their hands, which is a super important behavior, especially now as we move into sickness season, I can model that behavior to the sink next to them to see if that generates behavior. And Brandon and I have done this on a case at another day program, and we apply a lot of positive reinforcement in the form of songs, and this person's very reliably washing their hands, which is great. And then the verbal physical prompt could be like, wash hands, time to wash hands, right? So I'm going to use those 3 ideas and try to fade them as I go. I'm going to see if the model and hand gesture works. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to help the learner by using hand-over-hand assistance. Now, using hand-over-hand assistance is very intrusive. Not everyone is going to be okay with you guiding them in this way. We need to be cautious people that have sexual trauma, that we are not re-traumatizing them. We want to make sure we have a great relationship with the VIP, and we want to make sure that we get their consent or assent as well before we engage in this most intrusive prompt. That they are okay with this procedure that we're using. We're not just automatically taking them by the hands first minute we're working with this person, right? Do you guys have any other questions? I'm glad you brought that up because it led to some other ideas.
I have a kind of specific question.
Sure.
So one of my clients, we're working on like not yelling across the room to get someone's attention, but walking up to them to get their attention. And all I really do is like verbal prompting, like, oh, how about we go up and go talk to them and like stuff like that. And I know that verbal prompting is super hard to fade because it's like either you're talking or you're not talking. So like, how would you fade that without like how would I get my client to go up to somebody while trying to fade that verbal prompt of saying like, oh, why don't you go up to them and talk to them?
Yeah, and you're right, Emma. Is that Emma?
Yeah.
That it's hard to fade a verbal prompt because it's kind of the last prompt, right? It's the last prompt before independence. So I would really rely on two strategies. One is differential reinforcement. And hopefully I'd be able to talk and coach the person they're speaking to supply a high level of reinforcement when they walk up to them and engage in that behavior we'd like to see, unassisted, unprompted, I mean. So I'm going to think about using differential reinforcement as a way to kind of apply a lot of reinforcement for an unprompted response. And I could also fade verbal prompting one more way. Does anyone know how I might fade a verbal prompt?
Isn't it you say like less of the sentence?
You could say less of the sentence, yes, like and I think indirect. And I might say to the VIP, what should we be doing right now? What do we need to do as kind of an indirect verbal prompt where I'm not giving the exact answer, but I'm giving kind of like a little clue that there's probably a little bit more they need to think about. So I could fade it that way. What was that?
Gestural prompting.
So if I use gestural prompting, I'm actually going to a higher prompt level. So I want to be careful with that. But I could use a time delay as well here. And I could use the verbal prompt if that's reliably controlling the behavior and slowly increase the verbal prompt, the time between me offering the verbal prompt. But you really need to rely here on differential reinforcement, Emma, and supply a lot of reinforcement when we get the behavior we like from the individual. And a minimal or moderate amount of reinforcement when they're screaming across the room. Does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. I really appreciate the question. Does anyone else have any other questions? Great questions. Really appreciate it. Let me know if anything comes up. And you can also send me a message as well on Teams. Okay, so those are the 4 response strategies we may think about. The one thing to consider about response prompts is that, the one other thing, is that they're much more difficult to fade than stimulus prompts. So if we could default to stimulus prompts, that's probably the way to go. So let's get into stimulus prompting. Oh, there's more to this.
Well, you talked.
I kind of talked about this already. Good to use for behavior change. So this is good to use for behavior change when we have a lot of behaviors that lead to an ultimate outcome. Sorry, we're going to move back a minute. Sorry. It allows for some more flexibility in our work. You know, we're not kind of rigidly following this pyramid or the time on a stopwatch. This is graduated guidance. When you feel the learner responding on their own, reduce prompting immediately. So it kind of leads into us fading. And carefully attend to the child or adult's movement to learn when more intrusive prompts may be needed. And we're going to swoop in and supply those prompts so the person is successful engaging in these behaviors. And one thing they don't mention is applying the reinforcement effect to the behaviors we like to see. Okay, cool. Let's move on to stimulus prompting, I think. Yes! Here we are, stimulus prompting. So like I mentioned, response prompts are more difficult to fade. And I think there might be one of the reasons why they're more difficult to fade is because it's hard to get everyone on the team to follow through with these prompting strategies. When mom at home reliably gets a behavior from their son or daughter, they are reinforced to continue using that prompt. It's hard to coach them to change their methods. So stimulus prompts are easier to fade. And there's some, these are just some stimulus prompts. We're not going to get into all of them. There's more than these that we're going to review today. And the stimulus prompt is we're going to add some kind of stimulus to the environment, temporary, that's going to cause the behavior that we'd like to see to become more likely. So you see this kind of in when you're at a restaurant. What sign do you always see in the bathroom at a restaurant?
Employees should wash their hands.
Yes. So that could be a stimulus prompt that they added to the bathroom to, and it's probably the law because I see it in every bathroom, a restaurant bathroom, and employees must wash their hands. So that could be considered maybe a stimulus prompt. You know, they're not fading it. They're not moving it around. And probably the employee after a day or two doesn't even notice that sign anymore. But we hope that it causes the employees to wash their hands, especially before they start making our food. Easier to fade. Sorry I brought that up so early in the morning, before lunch, when I didn't bring my lunch. Positional prompts. So what I could do here is place the correct choice closer to the VIP or client. So if I'm teaching them to select something, I'm teaching them a card game, I'm teaching them, I could put this item that's the correct response closer to them. And if I do, they might be more likely to grab or touch or use the one that is closer to them. And to fade that, what might I do over time? Yeah, move it back into the array. There's also a redundancy prompts. One or more stimulus or response dimension, color, size, or shape are paired with the correct choice. So let's get into it before I get ahead, because I feel like I've been doing that with these PowerPoints. So here's an example of stimulus prompting for in a math book, probably. And they're teaching the learner 7 minus 2. So what did they do here in the book to help teach a learner to do subtraction? Or finding the difference? What kind of stimulus prompting did they use here?
Or just turn the camera shut the phone.
Oh, you can't see it? Can you see my screen, Brandon?
No.
Brandon, can you see my screen?
No, I can't.
Can someone else answer? Can someone else help Brandon out?
Redundancy. Right? They make it big. They make
Yeah,
everything
right.
bigger.
Well-
You can see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
So what did they do? The people that could see it. Yes, the stick man.
They faded them.
They faded them over time, right? So they use these stick men to help teach the learner how to do this behavior. As the learner started to contact reinforcement, they are fading the stick men until there is no more stick men. There is no more prompting. So this is one method that the teacher used and the authors of this book used to help teach subtraction, using stick men. It would be a good idea if you thought about using this strategy for one of your VIPs that you used a preferred stick man. Like who? Like who? Or a preferred character. Doesn't have to be a, like Forky. Use Forky for my behavioral interventions, please. Okay, let's move on. Or not Blippi. Please, not Blippi.
Blippi's aversive, man.
So it goes right to this? Is there? Go forward one. Is that the last slide?
Go forward one?
Yeah. Okay, go back to. So what are some other stimulus prompts ideas that we could put into place? You know, I thought about one, this is just an example. I mean, and let's talk about a couple examples that we could think about. I think about the auditorium. And there's a big assembly coming up, and you have 30 kids that have to stand in certain spots. What stimulus prompt might teachers implement to help the learner know where they must stand? Yeah, tape on the floor. It's classic. That's a stimulus prompt to show the learner where they must stand. Now, hopefully over time, they could fade the tape on the floor. What can they do to fade the tape on the floor? Okay, you could, if it was like a fluorescent tape or something, you could change the color of the tape to look more and more like what?
Well, like say you blue tape it first, and then eventually maybe you'll use clear tape so it represents the same color as the floor.
Brilliant idea. Yeah, you want to make sure you fade it to the natural SD. So yeah, the floor. And I was thinking about, and that's a perfectly acceptable way to fade it, but I was thinking just cutting the tape to be smaller and smaller and smaller until it's gone, which could be another method, right? So yeah, so what's another example of a stimulus prompt that we could use for teaching? And I should have more examples in this, and I will add more for the next time. What if we're teaching someone money? What can we do to the money, not actual money, but fake money that we printed out, we counterfeited, to help teach someone? What can we do? What's an important part of money to tell the difference between the values?
We can have the money like bigger and then make it smaller and smaller, the numbers.
Yeah, exactly right. Is that Yorkina?
Yep.
Thank you, Yorkina. Yeah, exactly right. So I'm going to make that number real big in the corner to draw that person's eyes, because that's where we tell the difference. Otherwise, it just looks like an old dude on a piece of green paper. So I'm going to draw their eyes to that number in the corner by making that very big. And over time, as I'm teaching the learner, I could do what with that dollar value? To fade it. Shrink it down to normal size over time, right? As the learner starts to contact reinforcement and learn this behavior. So there's many ways we could use stimulus prompting. We could create a little instruction visual board. And there's so many bathroom behaviors, right? Like washing hands. I could hang up a sign in the bathroom for someone that shows the 3 steps to washing the hands. Is there 3 steps? I don't want you guys to think I'm gross if I only do 3 steps in there.
No, I think
Break it down as one.
Yeah, well, good point, Kerlin. So depending on the learner, we may have to break down steps into many steps, right? So yeah, good point. So you can see a lot of different ways that we could use stimulus prompts. We taught a learner, Andy did, to identify, to put their shirt on the correct way, not backwards. This person was coming into program wearing shirts backwards. What's a method that you guys use to put your shirt on the right way? Look for the tag, yeah. Who said that?
Asthma.
Yeah, Asma, look for the tag. So what did we do? We highlighted a tag in shirts. We put highlighter or sticky note or something like that on the back. And we gave him the rule, which was from last week's training, rule govern behavior. Tag goes in the back. That was the rule we gave the learner. This person would identify the tag in the back, and there was extra sticky on it, and was able to put the shirt on the correct way. And we faded the prompt to be the natural tag over time. So you see that a lot of these behaviors we could get very creative with and come up with a stimulus prompt that might work very well in place of a response prompt, which we should be doing. We should be thinking about. Talk to your BCBAs about this idea. And a lot of them are probably recommending stimulus prompting to you guys as well. Do you guys have any questions about stimulus prompt or response prompts after the brief seminar we did already? Okay, the last slide, yeah, I thought it was. The last slide to think about is the occasions when our VIP makes a mistake. So we're using a we're using a prompting strategy, and we are using a prompt and the learner makes a mistake. What do we do to correct this behavior? Because we don't want the learner to make more than one mistake. Because what could happen if someone keeps making mistakes with the behavior? What was it?
They'll chain it in.
They might chain in the incorrect response. What else might happen? What happens if we keep engaging in a behavior and we keep getting it wrong? Yeah, it leads to not reinforcement, but Punishment. And then we're a lot less likely to engage in this behavior. So when we're teaching someone a skill, not ideal to lead the behavior to punishment because they're doing it incorrectly or they make an error or mistake. So it really hurts our teaching. So after one mistake, we want to consider an error correction procedure. And this is just one error correction procedure in a multitude of other ones that we could implement. But this is a good one, and I like to use this one. So what we do, a mistake is made. That's step one. We notice a mistake is made with our VIP after offering a prompt. We want to withhold reinforcement during this time as best as possible. And to help not chain it in, we want to create a few seconds delay before we implement this error correction procedure. So what I like to do is break eye contact or hold up my hand to indicate an incorrect response. And that's really as much I'm going to do. And I'm going to wait 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. Because again, I don't want to chain in that incorrect response. I'm going to then think about increasing the prompt level, the intrusiveness of the prompt level. So if I'm using a verbal prompt and a mistake is made, I may then consider to move up to a model or gestural prompt, if that worked for the learner in the past. And the more intrusive prompt might be more reliable to generate the behavior at that time. If the learner engages in that correct response, then I'm going to just simply provide reinforcement and rinse and repeat. So basically what I'm doing is I'm increasing my prompt level to ensure that the VIP engages in the behavior I'd like to see. And then I'm going to provide reinforcement for a job well done. That is just one of the many error correction procedures we can use and implement. But think about how after a mistake is made, we wait 3 to 5 seconds and then increase the level of prompting so the learner is successful on the second attempt so that we could lead the learner to reinforcement. So that's just an error correction procedure to think about if a mistake is made when you're using prompts. This is the last slide for today, guys. What questions do you guys have about prompting or differential reinforcement? I got all my ideas from Cooper and from actually the school, FIT as well. That should be up there. A lot of those PowerPoints were from FIT. Does anyone have any questions for me? Remember, guys, prompting should be in the antecedent section of your behavior support plan. Remember, prompting should be faded very quickly by using one of these prompt fading methods that we talked about. Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much and have a great day. And I'm always available to you guys. If you have any questions, anything to talk about, please reach out to me, okay?
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.